The American Civil War, from 1861 to 1865, was the culmination of decades of simmering tensions. At the heart of the conflict lay the issue of slavery. The Southern states, dependent on enslaved labor, fiercely defended the institution. The Northern states, industrialized and morally opposed to slavery, pushed for its abolition. It ignited debates in Congress and sparked violence on the streets. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 allowed new territories to decide on slavery. The result was chaos and violence in Kansas. The Dred Scott decision in 1857 further inflamed tensions. The nation, deeply divided, stood on the brink of war.
In November 1860, Abraham Lincoln, a Republican opposing the expansion of slavery, was elected president. Southern states, fearing for their way of life, began to secede from the Union. South Carolina led the way, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. These states formed the Confederate States of America, electing Jefferson Davis as president. The Confederacy's first act of war came on April 12, 1861, with the bombardment of Fort Sumter. The fort surrendered after a 34-hour bombardment. The Civil War had begun. Following the attack, the nation rallied to the cause. 4 more Southern states joined the Confederacy. The border states remained in the Union but were deeply divided.
The year 1862 proved to be a turning point in the war. In the East, Union General George McClellan, cautious and meticulous, faced off against the Confederacy's Robert E. Lee, a brilliant military strategist. Lee, seeking to take the war to the north and possibly gain foreign recognition for the Confederacy, invaded Maryland in September. On September 17, 1862, the two armies clashed near Sharpsburg, Maryland, in the Battle of Antietam. The battle, fought in a series of bloody assaults and counterattacks, resulted in the single bloodiest day in American history, with over 22,000 casualties. Although tactically a draw, Antietam was a strategic victory for the Union. Lee's invasion of the North had been halted, and he was forced to retreat back to Virginia. More importantly, Antietam provided Lincoln with the opportunity he had been waiting for to issue the Emancipation Proclamation.
On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are, and henceforward shall be free. The Emancipation Proclamation was a watershed moment in American history. It transformed the Civil War from a struggle to preserve the Union into a fight for human freedom. The proclamation had both moral and strategic implications. It energized the North, giving the Union cause a moral high ground and attracting international support. The proclamation also allowed African Americans to enlist in the Union Army, adding much-needed manpower to the Union ranks. The Emancipation Proclamation did not immediately free all slaves in the United States. It applied only to slaves in states that were in rebellion against the Union, and it did not apply to slaves in border states that remained loyal. However, the proclamation was a powerful symbol of the Union's commitment to ending slavery, and it paved the way for the eventual abolition of slavery throughout the nation.
A defining moment, the Battle of Gettysburg. In the summer of 1863, Lee invaded the North, encountering the Union Army at Gettysburg. The battle, fought over 3 days in early July, proved to be the turning point of the war. Union soldiers clung to their positions. On the 3rd day, Lee ordered Pickett's charge. The charge was repulsed with heavy losses. Lee's army retreated back to Virginia. Gettysburg was a devastating defeat for the Confederacy. It marked the beginning of the South's decline.
The siege of Vicksburg, control of the Mississippi. While the Battle of Gettysburg raged in the East, another crucial campaign was unfolding in the West. The Union Army, under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant, had been steadily advancing on Vicksburg, Mississippi, a strategically vital Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River. Grant's campaign to capture Vicksburg was a masterpiece of military strategy and logistics. He maneuvered his army through swamps and bayous, outflanking and defeating Confederate forces under General John C. Pemberton. After a 6-week siege, Vicksburg surrendered on July 4, 1863, the same day as Lee's defeat at Gettysburg. The capture of Vicksburg gave the Union complete control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two and cutting off vital supply lines from Texas and Arkansas. The Union victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg marked a major turning point in the war, shifting the balance of power decisively in favor of the North.
Grant versus Lee, the Wilderness and the Fall of Richmond. In 1864, Lincoln appointed Grant as commander of all Union armies. Grant launched relentless campaigns against Lee in Virginia. The armies clashed in bloody battles at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor. Heavy casualties on both sides. Grant pressed Lee southward, laying siege to Petersburg and Richmond. The siege lasted 9 months with brutal fighting. In April 1865, Lee abandoned Petersburg and Richmond. He surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th. Grant allowed Confederate soldiers to return home with their horses. The rebels are our countrymen again.
Lincoln's legacy, Reconstruction, and the end of an era. The surrender at Appomattox effectively ended the Civil War. The Confederacy's remaining armies surrendered shortly thereafter, and the nation began the long and difficult process of Reconstruction. But the cost of victory had been immense. Over 620,000 soldiers had died in the conflict, more than in all other American wars combined. Just days after Lee's surrender, President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's death, a national tragedy, robbed the nation of its leader at a time when his wisdom and compassion were most needed. Despite his untimely death, Lincoln's legacy lived on. He had preserved the Union, ended slavery, and set in motion the forces that would eventually lead to a more just and equitable society. His words, enshrined in the Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural address, continue to inspire and challenge us today.
Echoes of the conflict, the Civil War's enduring significance. The American Civil War remains a pivotal event in American history. It was a defining moment in the nation's struggle to live up to its ideals of liberty and equality. The war resolved the issue of slavery, but it also left behind a legacy of sectionalism, racism, and political division that continue to shape American society today. The Civil War also had a profound impact on the development of the United States as a world power. The war spurred industrialization, technological innovation, and the expansion of federal power. The United States emerged from the war as a unified nation with a strong national government, poised to play a leading role on the world stage. The Civil War continues to fascinate and inspire us, reminding us of the fragility of democracy and the importance of preserving our hard-won freedoms. The stories of courage, sacrifice, and resilience displayed by soldiers and civilians alike during this tumultuous period serve as a testament to the enduring spirit of the American people.
Stories of courage and sacrifice, human faces of the war. Beyond the grand strategies and epic battles, the Civil War was ultimately a human drama, filled with stories of courage, sacrifice, and loss. One such story is that of Clara Barton, a schoolteacher who volunteered as a nurse at the outbreak of the war. Barton, who became known as the Angel of the Battlefield, tirelessly tended to wounded soldiers, often under enemy fire. After the war, she founded the American Red Cross, which continues to provide humanitarian aid around the world. Another compelling story is that of Robert Smalls, an enslaved man who staged a daring escape from slavery in Charleston Harbor. Smalls, a skilled pilot, commandeered a Confederate steamship, the Planter, and sailed it past Confederate checkpoints to freedom behind Union lines. Smalls' courage and ingenuity made him a hero in the North, and he went on to serve in the Union Navy and later as a congressman during Reconstruction. These stories, along with countless others, remind us that the Civil War was not just a clash of armies, but a conflict that touched the lives of millions of ordinary Americans.
A nation forged anew, the Civil War's lasting impact. The American Civil War was a watershed moment in American history, a brutal and transformative experience that reshaped the nation's identity and destiny. The war tested the very fabric of American democracy, revealing both its strengths and its flaws. The war's legacy continues to be debated and reinterpreted today. Monuments and memorials across the country stand as silent reminders of the conflict, sparking ongoing conversations about race, memory, and reconciliation. The Civil War, though long over, continues to shape our understanding of what it means to be an American. The words of Abraham Lincoln, spoken at the dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery in 1863, continue to resonate with profound meaning, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. It is a reminder of the enduring power of hope and the enduring responsibility to strive for a more perfect union.